Here are the notes for 10.3b, part 2. So we're going to talk about a period and phase shift. So when the period is 1, or when b is 1, the period for both of these, remember, was always 0 to 2 pi, right? And then when I threw a number in front of the b here, it was still started at 0, and it would just go to 2 pi over b, right? So 2 pi over b. All right, what we're going to talk about today is the phase shift of this, which means it might not start at 0. It might move to the left or it might move to the right. So it's the horizontal shift of the function. So phase shift. All right, not that I'm going to quiz you on vocab, but I am going to ask, like, if you look down here at these problems, amplitude, blank, period, blank, phase shift, blank. So you have to know what it means that I'm asking, okay? All right, so remember, this is the formula, or if it's cosine, this is the formula. This number right here is your line, right? This tells you the period, so you do 2 pi over b. This is your amplitude. This now is your H for horizontal shift, so phase shift. This is a big thing here. Notice there's already a minus there. So if there is a minus, it's going to move to the right. If it's a plus, it moves to the left. Okay? So this is just noting all of those things that we already said. All right, let's move to the next page to actually do the problem. So amplitude, I look in front of the sign. There's nothing there, so amplitude is 1. The y value is, remember, your plus k number. So that's the other thing I call it is your line. So what's in place of the k? 0. Your period, you take your b value, right? There is, I guess I should go to phase shift first. There is no phase shift, so it's going to start at 0. And then to get that ending number, you do 2 pi divided by b, which b is in the 3 position there. Okay, so now in blue, I'm drawing this function here. So my line is 0, my max is 1, my min is -1, and then to do the lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know it ends at 2 pi over 3 and starts at 0. And remember, this was the hard part, right? Is to try and figure out what are my tick marks. So I have to come up here. I'm going to do 2 pi over 3 divided by 4, which is really just like saying 2 pi over 3 times 1/4, which is really 2 pi over 12, which is really just pi over 6. So a lot of work just for me to tell you that this first one here is pi over 6. So 1 pi over 6. I'm just going to keep it over 6, okay? So 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6 is 2 pi over 3. So we just leave that one as is. Okay, now I'm ready to graph it. So it's sine, which means my first dot goes on the line, right? Then it's positive, so the next dot is going to go to the max. Then line, then min. I think I went too low, sorry. Min. 1, 2, 3. Now I didn't go over enough. Min, and then back to the line. Okay, I just double check. Do I have 5 dots? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, I do. Does it look like an S because it's sine? Yes, it does. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and change colors here. So I'll use purple. And then we're going to do the second part on the same graph just so we can see how it moved. Okay, amplitude is the number in front of sine. So in this case, it's just a 1. Your y value, remember, is what is being added. So it's like where your line's going to go. It's still at 0. Your period, you look at your b value. It's going to end at 2 pi over 3. And then to figure out where it's shifting, well, I guess we'll keep the 0 to 2 pi over 3 as like the original. And then to look at the shift, you look inside here. It's pi over 6. Because it's a minus, it means to the right, pi over 6. Okay? So it's still sine, so that first point is still going to go on the line. It's still positive, so it's going to go line, max, line, min, line, right? But this time, your first dot is going to go at pi over 6. So line, max, line, min, line. Right? So it's the exact same as the blue sine graph. I just shifted it to the right. So think of it as like a copy-paste kind of deal. Then you're just shifting it to the right. All right, so this time, technically, and I'm not going to make you change here, but the period starts at pi over 6, and this time it's going to end after. So if that was, remember I was counting by ones, right? So it was 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, which means this is 5 pi over 6. Okay, so the period really is pi over 6 to 5 pi over 6. It didn't end anymore at the 2 pi over 3, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to work on today, is shifting it to the left or to the right. So we're still kind of reviewing everything that we've done up to this point, though, right? Because we have to remember like how to label our axes. So first things first, amplitude. Remember, that's the number in front. So there's nothing here, so it's a 1. And then your line. This is your y value here. There's nothing there, so my line's going to be at 0. Phase shift, that means inside the parentheses. It's pi over 2, and since it's negative, we're really going to start to the right, pi over 2. Okay? Period. It doesn't really matter so much where we're starting right now. If we started at 0, fine. But it's 2 pi over your b value, which b is right here. So b is 1. So it's just the 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so this is your y-axis. This is your x-axis, right? So my line is at 0. It's shifting to the right, so I know I can put this stuff over here. 1, negative 1, 0, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, it ends at 2 pi. Divide by 4, so 2 pi over 4 is really just pi over 2. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, which is just pi, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2. Why did I extend it past 2 pi? Well, because remember, there's a phase shift of pi over 2. So I was thinking ahead. I already know my line is going to, the first dot is going to be at pi over 2, not at 0. Okay? So now I'm ready to graph. It is sine, so the first dot goes on the line. Okay? Getting set up is the hard part. From there, you're just graphing it. So you go line, it's positive, so then I'm going to go max. And then line, and then min, and then line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? It's an S, it's on its side. So domain is your X, range is your Y. Where did it start? At pi over 2. Where did it end? 5 pi over 2. Okay? This is also known as the period, but I don't want you to get mixed up finding it there. Okay, range, how low did it go? Negative 1. How high did it go? Positive 1. All right? This is a lot for one problem. So pause it, rewatch it, whatever you need to do. I will do the next one. Okay, so again, we're going to do this a little bit faster now. Amplitude is 1. The y value is 0. Phase shift, look here. It's pi. It's positive, so it's left. Period, your b is 1, so it's still the 2 pi over 1, which is just 2 pi. Right, so I'll just write 2 pi. I can't do domain and range yet until I graph. All right, but amplitude is on your y-axis. I put my line at 0. I put my max at 1. I put my min at negative 1. If it's going to 2 pi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know it ends at 2 pi. Remember, to get the first hash mark, you take whatever that last value is and divide by 4. So that's pi over 2. 1 pi over 2. 2 pi over 2 is just pi. 3 pi over 2. 4 pi over 2 is just 2 pi. 5 pi over 2. 6 pi over 2. Well, I'm just going to write 3 pi. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Why did I know to stop there? Because I know my first dot is at pi, so this is actually where I'm starting, rather than at 0, right? So I'm not starting here this time. Not starting here, so I had to go 2 more to the right. Okay, that's confusing. We haven't done that kind of shift yet, so rewatch if you need to. All right, now I'm paying attention to what it is. It's cosine, which means it either starts with the max or the min. Your A is positive here, right? This is positive. So that means you're going to go max first. So at pi, at max, there's my dot. There's only one place to go. From the max, you go back down to your line, down to your min, to your line, to your max. And then you connect. Okay? Just some things to double check. Is it a cup? Yes, because it's cosine. It's positive, so it should be able to hold water. Can it? Yes. Okay, do I have 5 dots? Do I have my x and my y axis labeled? Now then, you should be able to do domain. We've been doing it since Algebra 2. Domain is your x-axis. It starts at pi. It ends at 3 pi. Okay, range is how low, how high. So, how low? Oh my gosh, I went in the wrong direction. Sorry, I don't know how to erase and go backwards. So you're going to have to notice, which way did I say we were supposed to go? To the left. And then I don't know my left from right. And I moved us to the right. So I'm so sorry. You're going to have to go back and change that. So on my x-axis, this is 0. Since it went to the it went by pi over 2, I can go to the left, negative pi over 2, and then negative pi, right? So I'm not starting at positive pi. Where am I actually starting? Negative pi. Because of this, that said to the left pi, right? All right, so sorry. Same thing though. Max is at 1. Then to the line, then to the min, back to the line, back to the max. And then you make your cup, and then still double check all those other things that I said before, right? So 3 pi, that was 3 pi over 2. So now, when I go back and redo the domain, it starts at negative pi, and it's going to stop at positive pi. Okay, your range is -1, +1. Okay, sorry about that. Let's go to the next one here. So on this page, I'm going to do the first one, and then I just want you guys to do the next 2. Okay? You don't have to label everything, but you need to at least have it on your graph. So here, your amplitude is 1. Your line is 2, right? So this is y equals 2. So I'm going to go 1, 2. I'm going to draw a line at y equals 2. 1 above that is my max, and 1 below that is my min. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, on my x-axis, I need to know the period. So in between the trig function and your parenthesis there, your b is 1. So 2 pi over b is just 2 pi. So if I start at 0, and then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's going to end at 2 pi. Remember, to get that first hash mark, you take whatever your period is, divide by 4. So this is a common one that we've used a lot of times. 2 pi over 4 is just pi over 2. So going to the right, 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, which is just 1 pi, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi. Okay? This is the tricky part. This is what I messed up on last time. plus 2 pi tells me left 2 pi. So I need to extend my x-axis in the left direction, right? Since one tick mark to the right was positive pi over 2, one tick mark to the left is negative pi over 2. All right, now we're ready to graph. Pay attention to what it is. It's sine. So that first dot is going to go on the line at negative pi over 2. So sine, line, pi over 2. Okay, it's positive, so the number in front of the amplitude, right? I mean the sine. So it's going to go to the max. Line, max, line, min, back to the line. I don't know what just happened there. Line. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Double check that you have all of them. All right, so for domain, you start at negative pi over 2. We end at 3 pi over 2. How low, how high? Well, the lowest it went is 1. The highest it went is 3. So do the next two. I'll put the answers up in a quick review of it. That's what you're turning into Classroom. All right, so just a quick check here for number 4 that you have all of your axes labeled correctly. The line is at negative 1. The amplitude is 1, so the max will be 0. The min will be negative 2. On your x-axis, it's going to the left pi over 2, which I put here. So I start at negative pi over 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll end at 3 pi over 2. Okay. All right, it's cosine. So first, and it's positive. So the first dot goes at the max, which in this case is right on the x-axis. And then max, line, min, line, max. Connect your dots. It looks like so. I already put the range is negative 2 to 0. Domain is where does it start? It starts at negative pi over 2. And it goes to 3 pi over 2. All right, pause it, try the next one, and then check back. Okay, so hopefully by now, since you're turning it back on, you have labeled your axes, right? The line is at negative 3. So that's the first thing I did on my y-axis. I put negative 3, I drew a line. The amplitude is 2, so 2 above that line is negative 1, 2 below it is negative 5. Therefore, the range is from negative 5 to negative 1. Then for the x-axis, because my b value, the number right here between the sign and the parentheses is 1, my original period is 0 to 2 pi. This inside the parentheses here tells me move to the left pi over 2, so I also went to the left, negative pi over 2. So once I do 5 dots, that's negative pi over 2 is 1, 0 is 2, 3, 4, 5. That means my domain will start at negative pi over 2 and end at 3 pi over 2. Okay? It's sine. So the first thing is line. It's negative, so line, min, line, max, line. It's sine, so it should start and end on the line. In this case, my line is at negative 3. So the first dot is going to go there. Remember, in front of the 2, that amplitude is a negative. So I go down to the min, and then line, and then max, and then line. And I just double check. It's an S. Is that what I said for domain? Yes, so we are done. Please make sure to turn in these 2.